Good morning. I'm here to tell you that all I want to do is encourage you to put the fun in the dysfunctional family. If you have a family of origin, you came here from somebody. You came from a dysfunctional family, didn't you? It's kind of the nature of the beast because we're all involved in it. And we all bring our stuff into the equation. And I think it's important for us to recognize that this was, when we started the series, I thought it was a great series. But I wasn't asked to do it as part of the first part. And I thought, man, I'm glad I'm not doing that because the introspection that takes place is serious. And what we're talking about is serious. And at least for me, you need to know this, that I know this. I'll talk a lot more about what we aimed for and intended to do than what we necessarily carried out. I'm grateful for my family, for my girls. In fact, this will tell you how grateful I am. Some of you know that I'm something of a Dallas Cowboys fan. And there aren't many things I love more than Dallas football, but one of them is being a dad. And I'm grateful for those girls that God blessed us with, and many of you know them because they're around here a lot. Reagan is in this AIM class, and Caitlin's been through AIM and is now working as an assistant. But they are proof, reminder, affirmation of what God said, that children are heritage. They're a blessing from the Lord, and blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. And thinking about family of origin, I think it's interesting that it seems like everyone who's taken part in this has said something along the lines of, you need to know something about my family. There are some things about my family that I really love for you to know. And there's some things about my family my family of origin, I'd rather you not know. One of the things that has driven me the most in being the kind of father I am, and hopefully my kids will judge me more kindly than I judge myself. But one of the things that has driven me is one of the most painful things you could say to me. And since most of you wouldn't know him, you couldn't say it. But I've had people come up and say, you're just like your dad. And I don't want this to sound too critical. But for the most part, in being a father, I didn't want to be anything like my dad. And so I spent a lot of time saying, what did he do really poorly or not at all? And how do I do the opposite of that? My mom's in this picture. I learned a lot of great things from her that I'm grateful for. She's not a dad. There is a difference in the role. But I'm so grateful for her, and she's not perfect. But I thank God for her. One of the things we'll talk about is family involved in everything. One of the challenges for ministers is we do it in church all across the board. I think it's a travesty when we have our teenagers and children separate at all kinds of times. I understand Bible class, but one of the big moves in churches today is to have a separate place for kids' Bible class, and I'm talking about from birth all the way through college, and separate worship and everything else. And one of the things that we decided in our family very early is we wanted to be family. And so when we're doing something, this is a picture of us last summer on our way to the airport to fly to Honduras on a mission trip. And our whole family went and did that together. And when Dad would teach at camp or direct camp or go to a retreat, the whole family went. I mean, my kids grew up at camp. When Caitlin was getting ready to go to South Africa as her AIM field, I said, Caitlin, what are the things you want to do before you go? And one of them was, Dad, I want to go back to Mountain View. Because she spent so much time there, and it was so valuable for her, such an important place for her in her life, in her faith development. And one of the things I want to encourage you to do is to integrate. Don't say, this is my family time, and this is my ministry time, and this is my personal time. But to really pull all those together, I was particularly blessed with Reagan. By the way, that name means Ray again, which may have been a bad decision, knowing the frailties of the Ray. But anyway, thanks for not amening. I expected at least Matt to do that there. One of the things I did with her is we started hitting those, and please just throw this away, the terrible twos and the worst threes and all that stuff. Whatever, that's foolishness. But when she started having some of those 2-year-old challenges, especially with my role, it was easier for me to say, you know what, if somebody's going to be responsible for that behavior, I'll let it be me. And so I started taking her to the church office with me. And some of that was frustrating and a growing experience for me because 2- and 3-year-olds require a lot of attention. And when you don't have much attention anyway, it's hard to get some work done, but also give her some time. But by the grace of God and her patience and not much patience on my part, we were able to do that. And it's one of the things that I will forever be grateful for. I think it's one of the things we struggle with is being intentional with what we're doing. This is Reagan in Honduras. Doing something that, well, it's easier for me to talk about service than it is to serve. Anybody else? And there she is serving. This is us again getting ready to go. And there's Sonia. And I'll just have to tell you, when I put her picture up there, the introspection for me is this. God is able to overcome a lot of mistakes by Ray. And so a lot of what I'm going to say today is thank God that He's done something in spite of me. And a lot of that came through their mama. All of us have an hourglass. And there are opportunities that we'll not have ever again. You remember Paul encouraging the church at Ephesus. He says, pay attention to how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise. Anybody remember the next phrase? Making the most of the opportunities, for the days are evil. There are opportunities, especially fathers, there are opportunities with your children, especially fathers to daughters. There are opportunities with your daughters that will only come for a limited time and maybe only once, and you'll never have those opportunities again. And so I want to encourage each of you, not just in parenting, not just in being a father, but each of you to be very intentional about the things that you believe are important and making sure those things take place. 4.5 years ago, when Caitlin was a senior, the thought hit me. I mean, it's like she's about to graduate and leave. And I thought, she's not ready. I've not done a good enough job. I've not gotten done all the things that I think I need to get done in her life to teach her and the experiences and the equipping. And so we tried to cram a whole lot into that senior year of saying, these are the things you really you need to know and you need to experience and you need to think about and you need to do so that you'll be ready to launch out on your own. And I really believe because of that, I was a better dad to Reagan, because learning those lessons, it's like now I've still got 4 years with her, and I want to be sure in these last 4 years that I do a better job. Of course, about a year ago, we're 5 or 6 months from her graduating, and I had the same kind of thought. I've not done enough. It's not good enough. And don't hear that saying, I think my kids are terrible, because if you ever said that around me, you and I are going to step outside. No, really. I am biased about my kids. I think I've got the best kids anywhere. Some of you dads think you do, but you're wrong. I do. And I think parents ought to think that about their kids. They are a gift from God. They're not an accident. Some of you may be sitting here having been told you were an accident. That's foolishness. It's poor theology. Because every time a man, in the words of the Bible, knows a woman, does that result in a child? Some of you have forgotten. It's real easy. This means yes. This means no. Does every time a man knows a woman, does that result in a child? No. There's something about the work of God there. Wouldn't you agree? That is the work of God and the gift of life. And it may not have been intentional on our part, but children are intentional on His part. And it's important for us to treat them as a gift from God and to always remember that they are a gift. And so there's some things we've got to do before it's too late, before we don't have those opportunities anymore. So we'll talk about some of those things. this passage has caused a lot of people some heartache. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he's old, he will not depart from it. Abraham Lincoln said the only way to train a child in the way he should go is to go that way yourself. We've read Deuteronomy chapter 6. I think it's one of the most important passages in regards to being a father and passing on faith. But it's for this reason. I get the opportunity to talk to people occasionally about parenting. And my first encouragement from this passage is, if you're not going to do it, don't talk about it. And I think it becomes increasingly more important. I mean, I'm sure all of us have had someone say, do as I say, not as I do. And what'd you do? You went, if it's not important enough for you to do, don't talk to me about it. I think the generation that are teenagers now and those that are coming after them, that's even more true for them. That they're able to read through. Now, it doesn't say we're not that we're not human still and we don't struggle. But they're able to read through our talk and see our walk. And if they don't match, what happens is, and I think this is where a lot of teenagers are today, is they don't turn your volume down, they turn it off. And your voice in their life and your influence in their life disappears. And God says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to know these things. I want you to love me. But I don't want it to be just something you teach your kids. My impression from verses 6 through 9 is, these words I speak to you today are to be on your heart. Teach them diligently to your sons. Talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Bind them a sign on your hand and on your forehead, and write them on the doorpost. And it's a life that's immersed in God. It's a life that's consumed by God. Imagine Jesus, when He talks about the birds of the air, can you see Him looking and say, look at the birds of the air. Think how valuable they are to God and how well God takes care of them. He'll take care of you. Look at the grass of the field. It's here today and it's gone tomorrow. And what He's doing is, His life is so connected to God, it's consumed by God, that everywhere He is, everything that's going on, He's thinking of it in light of His relationship with God. You say, Ray, that's easy because He's God. I know. But you and I need to have those kind of lives. We need to be that connected. Remember what God told Noah to do? When you see the rainbow, remember. Remember what? Remember who I am, remember what I want, and remember my promise. What difference would it make if our whole lives were so immersed and connected into God that we're seeing Him and thinking about Him all the time? That when we see a rainbow, when we see birds, when we see grass in the field, when we see grapes, when we see whatever, that we're thinking about it and we're using those opportunities to pass on our faith, to talk about God all the time, because He is our life and He's who we're connected to. He's what we're thinking about. Train up a child, He says. I want to encourage you to prepare. This is one of the books that I found most helpful to me. Dr. Meg Meeker, she's also written more recently a book for fathers of boys. But this book helped me a lot. Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And it's one of those things, it's not the only resource. There are tons of resources. But I spent a lot of time studying adolescence, working as a youth minister and doing camps and stuff like that, but also because I had 2 girls. And I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be sure that I didn't make the same kind of mistakes. Part of the preparedness is, I told you, I learned a lot of things I wish I'd not learned from my dad. But I thank God that He surrounded us with people who were good examples. Don't just see those things. See them. Look for them. When you see someone doing well with their kids, notice that. But take the opportunity to say, what'd you do? How did you do that? What was important? What did you stay away from, and what were you very certain that you did? Be sure to get those influences. This was important for me. I have to say I didn't do it well. Not well enough. But the best gift I can give my girls is to love their mom. I think this is true because a daughter needs a dad to be the standard against which she judge judge all men. I pray my girls are gifted by God to get a better husband than their mother did. I really do. But as part of pulling all of that together, that doesn't mean I go, well, I hope they get better. It means I've got to always be growing. This is not what I intended, but you ever settle? In your relationships, if you're married with your wife, if you're a parent with your kids, as a minister, as a servant, just go down the list. You ever settle and think, well, it's not as good as it ought to be, but it's better than it used to be? Part of the struggle for me saying, well, I'm not like my dad in that way, was saying, I'm better than that, which is arrogant and pride. But sometimes it was an excuse for me to say, well, at least they've got it better than I did. Instead of saying, I want to be the best husband, the best father I can be. And that's a constant commitment and growth. Sometimes I hate this because it keeps me on track. One more reminder of this. Time is lost. It's the most rare commodity in the world. It's not money. It's not resources. It's time. And when it's gone, it's gone. And so it's important. These are some of the things we wanted to do, our values in our family. I wanted my girls to know, I will always love you no matter what. Now you may say, that's very simple. Of course, that's true for everyone. But just stop for a second. Did you ever feel like you were loved less by parents, loved less by a father, by your dad, because of something you'd done or not done? Anybody? The day my dad died. And I wish it still didn't affect me this way. But that's what I wondered. Did he ever just love me? Now, there were times he was proud of me. He said, I love you. But there are also times when a different message was conveyed. And I wanted them to know it before it, but October 7th, 2007, I made a commitment. My girls will never wonder if Dad loves them, no matter what. Now, I want the best for them always. I want them to do the best. I want them to avoid mistakes. But even when that's not the case, they're going to have one old man, at least one, who says, no matter what, I love you. I love you because of who you are. You're a gift from God, entrusted to me. And no matter what happens, I love you. Along with that, I wanted them to know, I got them out of order. We'll talk about them in my order. That I'm proud of you. Not because of what you do. Do both of those kind of sound like God? I think so. Not because of what you do, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, period, end of story. When you get the good grades, when you do well in your athletics, and when you bomb the test, and I can't talk about failing a class because that was unacceptable, but you know, when you've not done well, when you've really blown it, I am still proud of you, and I'm still proud to be your dad. And I'll tell you, that was easier for us because everywhere we went, literally, people are always bragging on our kids, and I was grateful for that. It reminded me again of this is the work of God, that God did something greater than our efforts. But no matter what, I love you and I'm proud of you. I wanted them to know this is Psalm 139. You remember that great psalm. Where can I go from your presence? Where can I flee from you? If I rise the wings. He just goes through everything. Everywhere I go, you're there. Heights, depths, far side of the sea, and then darkness. Darkness is light to you. And he says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are good, and my soul knows it full well. I wanted my girls to know that they were a wonderful creation of God. That was, in our house, WCOG. I would ask them, who are you? And they would say, a WCOG. I am a wonderful creation of God. Because everything in the world says something else, doesn't it? If you do really well, if you make the grades, if you're a great athlete, if you've got great looks, if you're whatever else, then that's your value. If you've got money, or, you ever notice kids are crazy? They think because parents have money, it's theirs. This is our house. No, this is my house. You just get to live in it. You're like, wait a second, Ray, is that a good attitude? I don't know. But it's the one they got with their dad. But value comes from the clothes you wear, or more importantly, the name or the brand of the shirt and the jeans and the socks and the shoes and the car you drive or your parents drive, or just go down the list. And all of that's foolishness. Our value, their value, comes from the God who created each of us in His image. Now think about the impact of that if you really believe that about your kids. If you're married, you believe that about your mate. If we believe that about each other. Here's a person created in the image of God. Remember Matthew 25, where Jesus said, if you did it to the least of these brothers of mine, you did it to me. It's true, even when I forgot and didn't live up to it, that the way I treated my girls is the way I was treating Jesus. And if I could see Him, that changed me. It's also important, we'll just forget all that stuff, to learn this stuff. I'm looking at that one. To be teachable. To own our mistakes. We're leaving Walmart one day, and they're probably, I'm going to say 8 and 12. And there's a guy there holding a sign. He's hoping that the light turns red, and I'm hoping it stays green. And guess what? It's red. So he holds up his little sign. Please help, need food. He's over there. Anybody want to guess where my eyes were? And my only peripheral vision is looking at that light. The light changed, and I turned. And I don't remember if it's Caitlin or Reagan. One of them said, Dad, why didn't we help them? Or help him? And so I went into my explanation of, well, some people, they don't really need help, and they could take care of themselves, and you know all the foolishness that maybe you've said as well. And one of them said, but didn't Jesus say when people ask for help to help them? My heart went here, but my thoughts about myself went to this. And I said, what do you want to do? Let's go buy some food. Now, this tells you how young they are. They thought McDonald's would be good. So we pull up at McDonald's, and what do you want? We get it. And I start to pay for it, and they say, no, we want to pay for it. And we pull back up there, and I want to go give the guy the food, and they say, no, we want to go give him the food. And I would have, even feeling convicted and very small, I would have handed in food and said, have a nice day, and gone on my way. But they stopped, gave him a hug, and took some time. And they taught me. I can't tell you how many times something would be going on, and they would quote some preacher they'd heard a lot. And they didn't have to give commentary. They would just, word for word, whatever, oh, Dad, it said. Oh, you're right. I was wrong. I messed up. I think it's important for us as ministers especially because we move a lot. You know, somebody said the first thing you should buy as a minister is a set of dollies. Keep the boxes. But I want to encourage you as best you can to find a place and have the humility and the commitment, and as much as it depends on you, to live at peace and be diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace, to find a place and stay. Stay for a long, long time. As Sonia and I were talking about what we thought we did well and where we thought we didn't do so well, and what we were grateful for, we started talking about names of people, brothers and sisters, particularly in Plains and Carlsbad and Denver City, and now even a few in Seminole, even though Caitlin was graduated and Reagan was close to it. But especially in Plains when they were really small, or when Reagan was born there. People that God used to shape their lives, who would take responsibility for them and would pour themselves into them, and not just people who would be grandparents and great-grandparents, but some who would be just like mom and dad, and also some who would be big sisters. We've got those treasured memories of people who God wove into our lives, and they've shaped and formed them. And that won't happen accidentally, and it won't happen quickly. I think it's important for us to know what our values are and to share those things, but also to live according to them. We made a commitment that, and it's one of the things I talked to leadership before I ever went anywhere. And I told them this. I don't know who told me. This is not original, but someone said, Ray, you make decisions for your family based upon your family values, not upon the expectations of the church, the whole church, or any part of it. And I think it's important for us to love the church, but the truth is there's some times when people in the church will have unreasonable expectations. And there are also some times where you will feel some pressure. I don't know if it's actually out there or in here. I do think a lot of times we make our own problems based upon trying to say we want to be people pleasers, and we want to make sure everybody's happy, and by the way, you just failed. You'll never get there. But we always said very plainly, we'll make decisions in our family based upon our own values, not your expectations. And if that's not okay, that's fine. But you need to know up front that's the way we're going to operate. And so there were some times where they wouldn't get to do what other people were doing, but it wasn't because someone at church would look down upon that. It was because it didn't fit our value. And there were some times where they did get to do some things that some people thought they shouldn't have gotten to do. And they got to talk to Ray, and that's where it should stop, right here. And I explained again, as gently as I know how, which is usually not very gently, but we make our decisions based upon our values. And if that's not okay with you, that's fine. There's another place for us to be. But to do that, I didn't do this as well as I wish I would have. I didn't protect them from some of those pressures. I tried. But talking to them, they felt a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, because they're the preacher's kid, or your dad teaches at Sunset, or whatever. They heard me complain, even with an intent not to. Even knowing Philippians 2:14, they heard me complain about he this and they that. And I want to encourage you not to do that. Teach your children to love the church, which is the bride of Christ. Teach them to love the church. Part of that means, even when you're injured and hurt, shut up. Now, I am talking to Ray. By the way, that also goes for your wife. Somebody gives you a hard time, you don't have to share everything. You having trouble with somebody? Man up, take care of it, but don't complain. For this reason, we can get over it a little better. When somebody gives Ray trouble, I can keep it out here a little bit. It bugs me. But Sonia takes it deep. And I can be over it, and we're long gone, months have passed, and something's said, and I'll say, what? And she said, well, they this. And because she loves Ray, and they hurt Ray, Now she's like, And my kids got some of that. They'd hear Dad say, well, those elders, if those deacons would just deacon a little bit and those elders would just elder a little bit, and I don't even know what that means, but if they just do that, oh, brother so-and-so, So don't complain. I know we're out of time. Make an intention. We did this, but we didn't do it consistently enough. To every night have a devotional. I remember my mom doing that with us. Every night. And we did it fairly often, but not often enough. Every night, pour into them. And always look to God and depend on His grace. There's other stuff there. I guess you can have that. Oh, do rituals. Have some things in your family that are your rituals. Every Thursday night when we were in Carlsbad, I don't know why, but we went to Chili's. And even little bitty things. We'd get a salad. This is not church, so she could say, what'd I get off your plate? Yeah, daddy tax, which at Chili's on the salad was a couple of croutons. Yeah, it's called daddy tax. You get ice cream, daddy tax is a bite. But it's those things that just were things we did, rites of passage. There's things we did that when you got to this point, Kevin said it. There he is. Write to your kids. Especially this one of the things Meg Meeker will talk about. Write letters. Letters telling them how much you love them, how proud you are of them, how grateful you are to God for them. Those things, I think, are things they'll treasure. It's important. I've got 3 more hours of stuff, and I have no time. God bless.